not for Great Falls Rising, for the state. Mary Moe will now initiate the forum. Mary.
Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see so many people here. I have been asked to moderate and also to explain the rules to all of you. First of all, I want you to know that each candidate has received all the questions in advance. We don't believe in gotcha here. We will begin in alphabetical order and move to the next person in line for each subsequent question. Among the questions, or asking the questions for us this evening, as you've heard, are Cascade County Commissioner Jane Weber and former Public Service Commissioner and legislator Ken Toole. Each question will, or each answer I should say, will have a specific amount of time, usually a minute. Our timers will alert the candidate to wrap it up when only 15 seconds remain. Sue Dickinson and Sharon Patton Griffin are our timekeepers. Sharon, if you'll show them your sign, they'll know what to look for. And she'll also signal when it's time to stop. Should you run over, it is my task to discipline you. I'm a teacher of many years' experience, and I'm known in my family, which is a large family, as Fair Share Mayor. So you can expect that I will ride hard on that. The candidates all have busy schedules, and we have promised them that we will conclude the forum by 8 o'clock. We ask that you not applaud or otherwise react or respond to candidates' answers so that we can get through as many questions as possible in that time frame. However, we do think it's important that you acknowledge our appreciation for these 5 Montanans for running for office. It requires a tremendous sacrifice. It's so important to our system of government to do this. So at the beginning and at the end, and right now, your applause and appreciation. And with that, Ken, will you begin with the first question?
Certainly. This is for John Heenan. And then we move down. Please tell us a little about yourself with an emphasis on helping us understand what distinguishes you from the other individuals vying to be the Democrats' candidate for Congress in 2018.
Hi everyone, I'm John Heenan. By my count, this is my 4th time at a Great Falls Rising event. So I don't remember all these people in February, but good to see you. Real quick, I only have a minute. I represent working people around the state against corporate bullies, big banks, big insurance companies. I've represented all of you in this room against dark money politicians that got caught engaging in campaign finance violations. I'm also a small business owner. My wife and I have a restaurant in Billings. By virtue of geography, I'm the candidate in this race that's in Yellowstone County. As we all know, there's a reason that Senator Tester, Senator Baucus would always have their headquarters in Yellowstone County, because like Cascade County, it's the 2 counties where elections are won and lost. So I'm running as an FDR Democrat to represent working people. I'm running on a campaign of Medicare for all, paying people a living wage, bringing back into the Democratic Party the party of working people, and I need your support.
Thank you.
My name is Grant Kier. I think it's absolutely important right now that we have people representing us who understand what the impacts are of decisions in Washington. I was raised by a single parent. My mom raised my older brother and I saw firsthand growing up how much families struggle to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. I think it's essential that we have people who understand that experience when they're going to Washington, D.C. I was lucky to make it, not because I'm special, but because I think this country is special and invested in me. And I ended up being trained as a scientist, worked on the front lines of energy sector as a well site geologist, worked assessing infrastructure across North America and Europe, and also worked successfully for the last 13 years across the rural and urban divide in Montana, helping farm and ranch families expand their businesses, helping small communities invest in public lands and open space, and helping Sportsman's Group get access to places to hunt and fish and pass on Montana's heritage. My name's Grant Kier, and I would really like your vote so I can do great things for everyone in Montana and Washington, D.C.
Hi, my name is John Meyer. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm the first person in my family to graduate from a four-year college. I went to the University of Montana. I got a degree in biology and Spanish. When I was at UM, I started a group. It was called Students for Economic and Social Justice. We got the university to break its contract with Russell Athletic Wear because of labor violations where the clothing was made that had UM's emblem on it. After going to school at UM, I worked for the Flathead National Forest. I worked up in the Flathead and then the Tongass up in Alaska. I went to Vermont Law School. I graduated with honors from Vermont Law School. My mom was killed right before I started law school. My family filed a wrongful death lawsuit. We settled. I received $40,000. I took that $40,000 and started a small nonprofit conservation group called Cottonwood Environmental Law Center. Now we focus on public lands. Yeah, that's what I got.
Hey everyone, I'm Jared Pettinato. I'm the only candidate in the race, born and raised in Montana. I'm a fourth generation Montanan to a railroading family in Whitefish. My dad worked for the railroad, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather. So you guys all raised me and taught me your values. Values like working with your neighbor, rolling up your sleeves and working hard to get things done, and pitching in for your community. We have a strong public service commitment here in Montana. So I took all those values and I served at the United States Department of Justice for 9 years. There I defended public lands here in Montana and throughout the United States. Forest Service projects, wind farms, public highways, and public rail. The United States trusted me with $16 billion in projects. Just last year I defeated Donald Trump's lawyer's firm down in LA and saved taxpayers $1.5 billion. So I see opportunities for Montana. In particular, I see them with the wind in the trees. We can make money out of thin air with wind energy in eastern Montana and use the money that grows on trees to manage our forests to reduce high severity wildfires. Thanks for having me. Again, I'm Jared Pettinato.
Thanks for coming. I'm Kathleen Williams, former state legislator. I've got a 35-year career finding win-win-win solutions to thorny natural resource issues. And I have a career of public service and a value of hard work. I'm from the east side of Bozeman, and basically I think we need to send a representative to Congress that has a record of proven results for Montana. Congress is about as broken as I can imagine, and we need to send people there that have a record of being successful in a hyperpartisan, divisive, minority, inexperienced environment, which is the Montana legislature, and Congress is the same except many times over. So I've delivered for Montana, and it's familiar territory. Passed a bill that created 170 new businesses and over 2,000 new Montana products. And that's just one example of what we need to send to Congress, results.
Thank you. Candidates. The ancient Greek philosopher Plutarch once observed that an imbalance between rich and poor is the oldest and most fatal ailment of all republics. More recently, Thomas Piketty, author of Capital in the 21st Century, concurred, saying extremely high levels of wealth inequality are incompatible with the principles of social justice, fundamental to modern democratic societies. In America today, according to the New York Times, the richest 1% in the United States now own more wealth than the bottom 90%. This question is for Mr. Kier. Do you agree with Plutarch and Piketty that America's unequal distribution of wealth poses a threat to our democracy? If not, why not? If yes, what would you, as representative in Congress, propose to do about that threat?
I absolutely agree with that statement. My wife and I lived for a few years in England, and we wanted to get back to Montana as fast as we could because we did not want to raise a family in a classless society. I'm terrified and troubled by where we're headed right now as a country. I would do several things about that. First, I think we need to revise our tax plan. I think what we just had was a revised tax scam. I think we need to make sure that our tax plan prioritizes working families and small businesses, not our wealthiest people in our country and our biggest businesses. I think we need to make sure we protect rights for workers to organize so that we will have a standing chance against large corporations. For 40 years, we've watched productivity increase from American workers while wages have remained stagnant. I think it's really important right now that we invest federal funds into public education, and we tie those investments to incentives for states to continue to invest more, because when we invest in public education at the local level, we exacerbate the haves versus the have-nots in public education. And finally, I think we need to focus on healthcare reforms, because the cost of healthcare is crippling people's pocketbooks and lives right now.
Mr. Meyer.
Money is destroying our democracy. The rich keep getting richer, and they're making tons of money off people who work really hard day in and day out. And we need to stop that from happening. I think that a good way to do that is to tie the lowest paid employee to the highest paid employee of any company. That way you work as a team. A company will work as a team. And you can say they make the highest paid, the CEO is paid 10 times, 15 times lowest paid employee. But ultimately, you don't ever lose sight of the people that are working for you. Because if you take care of people that work for you, they'll take care of you. And people in the 1% now have forgotten that idea. You have to take care of people, and that's just not happening. And so to the extent that we can tie the lowest paid employees to the highest paid employees, I think we'll do much better.
Mr. Pettinato.
Yes, we have all seen that the gains from the Great Recession that we have seen in our economy have all gone to the top. The wages aren't going up, and that's the wrong direction for America and for everyone. We're all feeling squeezed. I've talked to everybody who doesn't have enough money for healthcare, who doesn't have enough money to support their children and to get the things that they need. I actually read Piketty's book, and I think he's got some great ideas. I wrote my own book, and I concluded that government exists to make people happy, and we need to work on that. So how do we raise wages? We got 3 ways. You can increase the minimum wage. You can use supply and demand to increase wages, and you can also use unions. And we need to do all of those. We need to increase the minimum wage. We need to use the wind in the trees here in Montana to bring more jobs in, which raises wages for everybody. And we need to use unions and expand unions and make sure that they are more powerful so that they can negotiate. Shareholders already have a collective bargaining system. They call it a corporation. The workers need one so that they can fight the corporation over the profits.
Ms. Williams.
Absolutely. There is increasing income disparity across the nation and in Montana. I've worked on these issues as vice chair of the taxation committee in the Montana legislature. I was arguing on the House floor that trickle down did not work, that we needed trickle up, that we didn't need to cut income taxes in Montana. We needed to address property taxes, which were more regressive than income taxes. So these issues and a background in taxation, equitable taxation, is so important to send to Congress so that we can hit the ground running. Greg Gianforte is supporting an inequitable tax plan that, again, really gave the benefits to the wealthy and to corporations. So I've got a history of laying the groundwork for an earned income tax credit, which is a wonderfully progressive type of policy, and I've worked really hard on economic development so that we can, raise the tide and float all our ships. Thank you.
Mr. Heenan.
Thank you. Yes, income inequality is skyrocketing, quite candidly. There's war being waged right now by the rich against the middle class. And when I say I'm running as an FDR Democrat, I'd encourage everyone to look up FDR's Economic Bill of Rights and look what it's about. And the platform that I'm running on is a platform to reinstate the American dream, which is at its core the right to a great quality public education. I support 2 years of tuition-free public college. The right, if you're willing to work hard, to get ahead. I support a living wage. And the knowledge that if you or your spouse gets sick, you're not going to have to come talk to me about filing a medical bankruptcy. So we need a much better healthcare system, and that's why I support a Medicare for All system that cuts out the health insurance company and the pharmaceutical company profits. and getting this dark money out of our politics so we can have representatives that represent us, which is not what we have now.
Thank you.
Okay, we're starting, this will be from Mr. Myers. Article 25 of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 states that everyone, quote, everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care and necessary social services. Do you support healthcare being universally available to all citizens? If so, how do you think we can accomplish this goal? If not, what criteria should be used to determine how healthcare services should be allocated?
I do support having health care for everyone. It seems like a no-brainer that today we have to talk about how we're gonna pay for people when they get sick, when the CEOs of healthcare companies are making $20, $40 million bonuses. That's problematic, to say the least. I think if we wanna move towards some sort of socialized universal healthcare, we first need to get some of the independents and the Republicans on board with the idea of moving together towards that idea. I think the best way to do that is to create a market system where people can pick whatever healthcare insurance company they want, include a public healthcare option, but then make all of the health insurance providers nonprofit. Because right now, they have for-profit health insurance providers who have a huge incentive to deny health insurance claims and make a lot of money for their CEOs in the top 1%.
All Americans deserve affordable health care. And we've watched the Republicans sabotage the system that we have and make it work worse. They've undermined it. They've taken away some of the subsidies. They've taken away the individual mandate. So we need to fix the system that we have. People are feeling their wages are staying the same and healthcare costs are rising, so we feel squeezed. We can do a couple things. We can lower prescription drug prices. Those are rising twice as fast as all the rest of them. And we can price them the same as the lowest cost in a developed country. And what that will do is bring them down and let the market work. We can also use I think we can pay people to bring them onto the exchange. Give them an incentive, pay them $200, and they can join, and if we do it right, that'll be around the time of Christmas. And just like your bank gives you $50 to come and go through all the paperwork, it's a pain to get on the exchange. I know, I've done it. If we give them $200, we will increase the number of insureds, and that will push premium prices down.
So those of you that have seen some of my ads, you know that healthcare is personal for me. My mother started to lose her memory when I was 11. She was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and my father and I became her caregivers for 8 years. So I've seen what healthcare issues and illness can do to a family. And I've been committed to working on healthcare issues in the legislature, and I commit to working on them in Congress. I have a fairly detailed healthcare proposal, which is online at kathleenformontana.com. Quickly, elements of that include stabilizing the individual market, allowing Medicare to bargain for drug prices, funding CHIP and the rural health center funds in the long run, not using them as political footballs, and then allowing people 55 and older to buy into Medicare and using that as a national basis for getting us to single payer faster than any other proposal would, because that's going to create a national grassroots demand. So let's work on it.
We already have universal health care. We have since President Reagan. Unfortunately, it's just the worst healthcare system in the world, where hospitals can't deny you access at the emergency room level. So we have people whose only care they can get is at the emergency room, which is incredibly expensive, incredibly inefficient. And I'm the candidate in this race that supports unequivocally Medicare for all. Respectfully to my friends here on the stage, the people that I file medical bankruptcies for, the people who I fight health insurance companies for, the tens of thousands of people in Montana who are getting their wages garnished because of medical debt, or who, like me, their premiums are going up at 25 and 30% a year, can't sit around and wait for incrementalism. We need real change, and we need to elect people that are committed to real change. So I believe in support of Medicare for All system that cuts out the health insurance company profits and cuts out the pharmaceutical company profits and puts the emphasis on us, the consumers.
I think that my opponents and I totally agree on the problem. We differ on the solution. I'm not willing to wait around to 2020 to see who's president to get started on this problem. I think we need to make sure that we have universal access to health care as quickly as possible. I will make it my #1 priority in Congress. I think that we start by adding a public option, Medicare as we know it, on the public exchanges. We work to allow Medicare the opportunity to negotiate prescription drug pricing. We continue with incentives that exist now for preventive care and health outcomes over tests and procedures. That is the #1 place where costs in the United States exceed every other developed country. It is costs of procedures and tests, not that we get more health care. I do see Medicare for all as a misnomer. I've been surprised to learn how many people on the campaign trail don't know that it's not Medicare as we know it, and that it has a $1.5 trillion a year shortfall in funding as proposed, based on some pretty progressive evaluations. So I'm for a much more practical approach that'll get there as fast as we possibly can.
Okay, moving along. Our public lands are under attack on several fronts. First, our national monuments. At President Trump's behest, Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke has recommended shrinking 4 national monuments and allowing commercial activity within 6 others. Second, our wilderness study areas. Last December, Senator Daines introduced a bill that would eliminate protection for wilderness study areas like the Big Snowies, the Middle Fork of the Judith, and others in Montana, releasing over 350,000 acres of Montana National Forest to multiple use management for timber harvest, mining, and grazing. Finally, our general national forest lands. Many conservative politicians blame our extensive fire seasons on poor land management practices by the Forest Service and support taking control of management of some federal acres, essentially allowing the camel's nose into the tent. We have 3 questions addressing these issues, which we will have you answer separately. We will start with Mr. Pettinato. What would you do if Zinke proposed reduction of the Missouri Breaks National Monument? You have 30 seconds.
I would call him and remind him where he came from. That's not how we do things, and the Missouri River Breaks is one of our treasures here in Montana. We need to push back against all attempts to cut back on that national monument. Gianforte voted in favor of a bill that would give more authority to the president and would restrict that power to designate those areas. So first, we call him. First, we undo and do the opposite of what Gianforte is doing. And third, we can turn the Missouri River Breaks into a national park, and that's the time.
Ms. Williams.
So the first night on the campaign trail for me, I spent in the Missouri River Breaks National Monument at River Mile 0, which I didn't plan, but seemed opportune. I think we need to make sure that he doesn't propose that. You can't wait until he proposes it to react. You need to establish that relationship with him and make sure he doesn't. And if he does, then we have to mobilize that grassroots effort that was so successful as a good opposition early on, and we're going to have to do it again.
Mr. Heenan.
Greg Gianforte just got made the chair of the House Subcommittee of the Department of Interior last week, which what that means in shorthand is he's there as a rubber stamp for Secretary Zinke. So what I would do is run for Congress to replace Greg Gianforte so that I could be there to represent the people of Montana and say hell no to Secretary Zinke if he tried to do that. So I'm already working on it because we don't need a rubber stamp as our representative.
Mr. Kier.
As far as I'm aware, I think I'm the only person in this race who has actually got a background in creating public lands for Montanans. I would absolutely oppose Secretary Zinke's efforts on this. I'd go one step further to call for field hearings with fellow congressional delegations. I think it would be pretty easy to get some members of Congress out to Missouri Breaks. And I'd ask them to usurp the authority of the executive branch and go ahead and do a congressional designation of the monument so that it wouldn't be able to be undone by the president.
Mr. Meyer.
I bow hunt and I rifle hunt in CMR. which is very near the breaks. If they propose to shrink the breaks, I would invite Zinke to come and hunt. I love taking my four-wheel drive truck and CMR, get mud bog and get stuck for a week and not see anybody out there. And I have gotten stuck out there, and it is an amazing thing. And if he can walk out and get out alive, if he's still hell-bent on shrinking it, I would talk some other hunters who, yeah.
This next one will start with Ms. Williams. How would you argue against Senator Daines' bill to release wilderness study areas?
So I've already argued against that, and there's actually two bills. There's one that Daines is related to the Forest Service, and then Gianforte's is related to BLM lands, and together there's over 770,000 acres proposed for release. So we should at some point decide whether a study area should be wilderness or not, but you don't do it with the stroke of a pen behind a desk in Washington, especially when there are two of those areas that are undergoing public review in a forest plan revision process. That is a slap in the face to the public process, and it shouldn't happen.
Mr. Heenan?
Yeah, the University of Montana just published a survey that showed that we Montanans overwhelmingly value our public lands. We don't want to give them away to lobbyists. I see this as a dark money issue. We have a representative who cares not about the people of Montana and what they want, but what corporate lobbyists and corporate insiders tell them to do back in Washington. So again, I'm already doing it. I'm not taking corporate PAC money. I'm not taking corporate lobbyist money. And that's because I only want to represent the people of Montana. And we already had a town hall on this issue last week to show our representative what a representative that cares about these things ought to be doing.
Mr. Kier?
Yeah, there's no question that these WSAs must be decided and determined. We need to get closure on these, but it is absolutely inappropriate to do them top down. There are communities that have absolute consensus around creating these WSAs, and those need to be moved forward, and we need to make sure that this is a process that involves public input. I've done a lot of homework and research on these and talked to a lot of folks in the Forest Service and in these communities. It does look like one or two of these probably aren't a good fit based on legal backgrounds and precedents. But there's no way to grab all these 700,000 acres together and pretend that this is a good idea coming out of Washington right now.
Mr. Meyer?
Gianforte has proposed releasing some additional land in addition to what Daines proposed. In particular, the Centennial Wilderness Study Area. I bow hunt down there. I teach students from the University of Utah down in southwest Montana in the Centennial Wilderness Study Area. I have started talking to some mountain bikers. The Continental Divide Trail goes through this area, and we'd like to allow some mountain biking, release that corner of the Wilderness Study Area, and protect the rest as wilderness. And so that's an on-the-ground thing that we're talking about and working with folks right now.
Mr. Pettinato?
During my time at the Department of Justice, I defended the Montana Wilderness Study Act. Here on the Lewis and Clark National Forest, the Middle Fork of the Judith, that is what I defended. And the courts now use my interpretation of that act. So when Daines and Gianforte go after it, that feels a little personal to me. So I think we got a few things we could do. We can use, it doesn't follow that just because the studies are done, that you need to release them. That's just not true. These wilderness study areas they have a purpose. They help segregate uses on the forest so that we can make sure that everybody can have the recreational experience that they want.
And our third question on public lands, we will start with Mr. Heenan. And the question is, what argument would you use to prevent the state from usurping the land management from the Forest Service?
I've got 40,000 miles on my car now since I started campaigning. I've been to a lot of facilities that are either being shuttered or have been shuttered as a result of our horrible budget cuts. The state of Montana doesn't want to take over federal public lands. They don't have the resources, they don't have the budget. What that is code for privatization. It's code for a Koch brothers takeover of our public lands because they want to take it from the feds to the state so they can sell it off on the cheap to rich people that want to fence you and I out. And I'll fight them at every step.
Mr. Kier.
Yeah, there's absolute bankruptcy. Bankruptcy would be the simple argument I would make. If we were to try to take over management of these lands, it would bankrupt the state of Montana. And in fact, there's no reason to even make a case for this. There's a really good authority vested in the 2014 Farm Bill called the Good Neighbor Authority that actually allows the federal government to partner with local state agencies and local partners on management issues. It's a really effective tool. What we need to do is fund the Forest Service so they have the resources and the staff to make good decisions, to plan their regions, to approve appropriate activities, and to create these partnerships and do good work by our forests.
Mr. Meyer.
When I looked at this question, I wrote down a one-sentence answer. The state can't afford it. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Pettinato.
Last year we burned 1.2 million acres. We lost $240 million of tourism. I'm from Whitefish. People were canceling their trips. They can't see Glacier Park. It hurts their lungs. We need to manage our forests better, and that means the federal people need to do it. And we created these conditions. We took out the largest trees in the forest for 80 years. We suppressed the wildfires for 80 years. And you've been out on the forest, so you know that it's a mess. We have too much on the ground. We have too much fuels on the ground. We have spindly trees. We need to make sure we fund the Forest Service better so that they can do the work and do the analysis and bring jobs, protect the tourism jobs, and make a healthier forest for the trees, for the wildlife, and the people who use it.
Ms. Williams.
So same argument, the state can't afford it. There are some good partnership opportunities between the feds and the state. As Grant mentioned, the decision-making should always stay with the feds. I have a 35-year career, including a stint with the Forest Service 30-some years ago, so I'm familiar with natural resource problem solving, ecological restoration, forest health, and I look forward to hitting the ground running on these issues in Congress.
Thank you.
Our next question will start with Mr. Kier. You've all been on the campaign trail for a long time now. What's an experience you've had during your campaign that had particular impact? Has anything especially moved you or made you look at an issue with new eyes?
I'm moved by the number of people in this room tonight on such a beautiful evening, so thank you very much. I've been absolutely floored at how much trust and belief people have given to me as a candidate, the stories people have shared. But the universal thing I've heard across Montana is how much we value our elected officials showing up and listening to us. It doesn't matter what your issue is, you want someone who's going to show up and listen to what you have to say. Now, I'm a guy from Missoula who has made a successful career of going into rural conservative communities and helping folks. You can't do that work if you're not willing to show up anywhere, even if you know folks are going to be a little bit skeptical, maybe a little nervous to meet you. One of the most moving things I've experienced is the Helena High School Students Forum on Gun Violence. These kids were mature, they were thoughtful, they were well organized, and they invited all of us to that town. I was deeply moved at their tenor and their integrity, and I was really saddened at how few candidates showed up for that forum.
Mr. Meyer.
Grant, I showed up. We were in Miles City a few weeks ago, and a woman was talking about the Trump tax scam, and she said I get about $10 more per paycheck, and it's just not enough to do what I need to do for my family. And she looked me right in the eyes and she said, please don't forget about us. And yeah, that's scary, and that cuts pretty hard. And I started thinking today about my bank account, and I thought, we're not that far away. So I will try my hardest not to forget about folks who are working very hard, because I'm right there with you right now.
Mr. Pettinato.
I met someone who told me that he and his wife wanted to retire, but they couldn't because they had to pay for their pharmaceutical costs, for their pharmaceutical drugs. And I find that ridiculous. I worked with Brian Schweitzer. I was his driver back in 2000 when we ran against Conrad Burns. I don't know if you guys remember that. We took the buses up to Canada for cheaper prescription drugs. We're still struggling with it. It's been 18 years, and now we're seeing the government crack down on the Canadian pharmacies that are helping Americans get those Canadian prices. So if you're taking advantage of that loophole, it's disappearing, and we need to do something about that. We can't keep at this and keep letting the pharmaceutical companies with their captive market raise prices on us. The Congress has decided, we can't let counterfeit drugs into America, so that gives the pharmaceutical companies a captive market. They can charge whatever they want. We don't need to move the drugs around. We have the internet. We can look up the prices on the developed countries and say, look, if you're selling them cheaper in Canada or France, then you need to sell them for the same price here. It gets us out of the mess, it brings the prices down, and it makes the pharmaceutical companies responsible to their constituents.
Ms. Williams.
I showed up too, Grant. I would say it's the people. It's always the people. I've run 4 campaigns, and I just love going door to door and listening to what Montanans' hopes, struggles, and dreams are. I'll say in this campaign, there were 3 that really struck me. One was a gentleman on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation that was struggling to maintain an abandoned cemetery next to his property. And he has spent 25 years maintaining that with his own frugal budget. And he's so proud that there haven't been any murders or rapes in that cemetery in those 26 years. There's also a couple that was just distraught about the tax bill potentially eliminating their ability to deduct their health payments, and they didn't know what they were going to do. That struck me. And then a woman who was just panicked about mental health cuts. Those are state-based, but we need to really work on all those aspects for all those people.
Mr. Heenan.
So everywhere I go, I'll go to schools, I'll go to hospitals, I'll talk to people in those communities. So here in this community, I've been to the college, I've been to the Gibson Alternative School, Quality Life Concepts. Meet amazing people doing hard work every single day that doesn't get appreciated or valued or even frankly considered. But across the state, bar none, for me was the School for the Deaf and Blind. If you haven't been there, go meet those amazing kids. I got to participate in a Chopped challenge and get to help decide whether the red team or blue team won. I was so inspired by those children. I was so inspired to see their dorms, hear about their successes. And you know, for those that haven't been there, they're sleeping on the same beds and sitting on the same couches that have been there for 35 years. And I said, what's like the other side of this argument? Who would say they're fine? The reality is we have a representative that doesn't care about kids like that, and we deserve somebody that will.
Thank you.
Our next question deals with energy. Energy production is one of the major drivers of climate change. Among the energy sources contributing to greenhouse gases, coal is the dirtiest. Coal plants in eastern Montana are being slated for closure because other states do not want the energy they produce. At the same time, Montana has tremendous potential to export renewable energy. We will begin our question with Mr. Meyer. Please explain your positions on coal and renewable energy production in Montana.
Actions speak louder than words. In 2011, I won a lawsuit with my law school mentor where we stopped a $550 million coal railroad from being built. It would have taken the land of farmers and ranchers in southeast Montana. Last year, I helped the Northern Cheyenne secure a grant for $100,000 to $150,000 that would look at the feasibility of developing their wind and energy resources. Right now, as we speak, I have a live lawsuit against the Montana Public Service Commission it's a constitutional case. Article 9, Section 1 of the Montana Constitution says we have the right to a clean and healthful environment. We're saying you're violating our right by not allowing us to produce more renewable energy. And so hopefully we'll win the case and everybody can start generating more renewable energy so we don't have to rely upon coal, which isn't helping any of us.
Mr. Pettinato.
We can make money out of thin air in eastern Montana. with wind energy. Wind presents the next treasure from the treasure state. It brings the best paying jobs in town. It brings rent for the landowners and money for the schools. This is an opportunity for Montana to bring money in and to export wind out. What Texas is to oil and gas, Montana is to wind. If you look at the maps, there are other states that are taking advantage of it. You look at North Dakota, you look at Iowa and Texas. They've got wind farms everywhere. That is what we need to do in Montana, to bring jobs in and to expand our Montana and to move it forward. As far as coal goes, wind and solar are not undermining coal. It's natural gas. We all know this. But we've got the Public Services Commission that thinks that they're going to single-handedly save coal. And that's just not going to work out for anybody. So they are just hurting Montana when they are making it harder to bring in wind farms and solar panels here to Montana.
Ms. Williams.
So I am absolutely committed to advancing renewable energy in Congress. We need to look at, and there's a group between the governor and the Attorney General's office that is working to look at options for Colstrip. But there are a lot of options there, potentially industrial scale solar, potentially another transmission line going south. So I really want to see a transition and a plan, and I do think that this group, I'm looking forward to some suggestions from them. We also, pump storage is a great opportunity for renewable energy and to help firm wind and solar. There's some great proposals out there that just need to get online. And then we need to advance storage. Really, renewable energy is held back by not having storage. And there's an incredible company up in Columbia Falls that has invented or is producing a new type of battery that's really, really exciting.
Mr. Heenan.
Climate change is real, it's happening. It's not a matter of political candidate opinions, it's a matter of scientific fact. And the problem is, this is a dark money issue. We have representatives who are literally not allowed to acknowledge scientific fact because their fossil fuel lobbyists will not let them. Will pull the plug on them and support another candidate. So we deserve representatives that will represent us, will look in our best interests. These are jobs, as my friends have mentioned, in sustainable energy that are coming online. There's more six-figure jobs available in sustainable energy now than in any other energy sector. Those jobs are going to go somewhere. I'd much rather them come to Montana than Asia. There's all kinds of opportunities to work collaboratively. But at the end of the day, you know, I want more $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 jobs in Montana, and we can't let our friends in Colstrip or anywhere else, you know, suffer. We need to look out for them, and we need to insist on corporate accountability.
Mr. Kier.
So I announced my campaign in a haze of smoke while families were evacuating their homes and farmers and ranchers were losing crops due to extreme severe drought and fires. We're now here debating this while communities are fleeing their homes and losing their homes, and communities are losing their crops because of extreme flooding. Climate change isn't just real, it is impacting our communities every single day now, and we have to do something about it. My Republican opponent seems to think that denying it is in our best economic interest. I would argue that acknowledging it is in our best economic interest. If he is half the businessman he says he is, he will remember that the customer is always right, and our customers are demanding cleaner forms of energy. Right now, we have not an asset in coal, an asset in incredibly skilled workers who can produce energy for our country. What we need to do is allow those workers to produce renewable forms of energy, geothermal, wind, solar, and other forms, invest in storage and transmission so that we will produce the energy customers want, and other states will not move forward and fill the gap, leaving us empty-handed and with no jobs in the energy sector.
Thank you.
This next one will begin with Mr. Pettinato. Drug use and abuse is a major problem in America and in Montana. From crowded court dockets to family violence to exploding prison populations, drugs seem to be the root cause of many social problems. What are two things you would support to alleviate the negative effect of drugs in our society?
It's a real problem. It's hurting our society. The meth and the opioids, I've seen it firsthand. I've seen family members who were addicted to opioids. And it's It's a hard thing to watch. It's a hard thing to recover from. We need to, first of all, shut down the supply even further. We need to take justice on the pharmaceutical companies who started all of this, they were just pumping out pills everywhere, and people were taking them, and they were pumping out more pills. They knew that this was not a reliable source of prescriptions, that they were causing this harm. So we need to take justice on them. We need to stop this from happening in the future, and so we need to punish them. And we need to take that money and we need to invest it in mental health care. We've seen in Montana that we're going in the wrong direction. A lot of our community centers have shut down, and that's not the right way to go, because we need to treat the people who are affected by this. Putting them in jail doesn't help. We need to take the money, the $31,000 a year that we're paying for inmates, and try to see what we can do to move that to treatment.
Ms. Williams.
So two things. One, we need to fight the stigma about addiction. We need to talk about treatment rather than criminalization. Two, we need to foster social and economic opportunities. A lot of times addiction is related to poverty, and it's because there aren't opportunities. So we need to foster opportunity and build economic development. And then we also, we need to continue the important federal funding programs that help with prevention. Just had a conversation about that earlier today. And then some of the initiatives aren't very well coordinated between local, state, and federal. And so we need to ensure that we're working to coordinate those programs between the courts, the prevention, and the funding programs at the federal level.
Mr. Heenan.
As a lawyer, I've been on a panel of lawyers that when someone accused of a crime can't hire a lawyer, I'll get appointed from time to time to represent them. And so I've seen firsthand over 15 years lots of drug addicts, drug dealers, drug users. I would disagree with the question that says, drugs seems to be a root cause. I would differ with that. I think the use of drugs is a symptom. The war on drugs is a war that has been waged for decades now. It can't be won. What I've seen firsthand is rich people get treatment, poor people get jail time, get institutionalized. I see it as an economic issue. It's far cheaper to halt generational poverty through the type of platform that I'm proposing, great public education, paying people a living wage, making sure that they don't have to file a medical bankruptcy. What we have to cure is the systemic poverty that people, I've seen 3 generations of drug addicts. The way that changes is by lifting people up economically.
Mr. Kier.
Yeah, I think one of the things you do with a role in leadership is identify those things that bring us together as communities instead of dividing us. And this is an issue that I have seen in small rural communities, in Indian country, and in our largest urban centers. We are all suffering from families being torn apart and lives being destroyed from drug abuse in our state and in our country. This is a huge opportunity to work together to solve it. First and foremost, I would support and continue Medicaid expansion. That was a tremendous move forward for people to have access to treatment so that people who were already addicted to drugs could get the treatment they needed to get out of them. The other thing I would do is continue Medicaid expansion and add caseworkers so that we are giving people access to preventive mental health. When you feel like you are heading towards depression or you feel that you are without a clear path forward in your life, having a means to get that help early so that you're not turning to drugs would be an important one. And last is criminal justice reform. I think it's really important that we get really clear about treating the people who are dealing these things and creating these opportunities versus the people who are using them sometimes under circumstances of prescription.
Mr. Meyer.
This is a heavy question. Try and lighten it up a little bit. Does anyone know what the 18th Amendment says or did or didn't do? 18th Amendment, what is it? Prohibition. Yeah, so I'm John, I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for several years. In my alcohol recovery meetings, I will sit next to a guy driving a Porsche. I'll sit next to somebody trying to recover from meth, from heroin, you name it. And the one thing that binds all these people is they don't want to drink, they don't want to take drugs. nobody cares in these meetings if you're a Democrat or Republican. And they always say, everybody, I've never once heard someone say, I wish alcohol was illegal. They say it brings us together. And so I think that us as a culture trying to ban or outlaw marijuana is a losing cause. And I think that if we legalize marijuana, we can tax that and pay for social causes we don't have money to do. The other issue I think that we can do.
Your time is up, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Let's turn our attention to trade. It's evidently all about leveling the playing field with China. With Trump's insistence that China agree to $1 billion reduction in trade deficit, we appear to be heading into a trans-Pacific trade war that could affect Montana's farmers, ranchers, businesses, and workers. This question is for Ms. Williams. If you were part of the delegation meeting with Chinese officials, how would you propose to level the playing field regarding the trade situation without jeopardizing our Montana farmers and ranchers or alienating our allies?
That's a lot to do in one meeting, but here's what I would be thinking about. The way not to do it is a unilateral trade war. We called out the proposed tariffs and their potential impact on Montana's agricultural sector. Wheat and beef are in those listed, and our current representative had an opportunity to sign a letter that 107 Republican members of Congress signed and sent to the president that all it said was, please be careful, we're a little worried about this. He didn't sign it. What does that say? So I am interested in rebuilding our place in the world. I think we need to have functional trade agreements. The TPP, actually I expressed some concern about it because it had an element in there that prescription drug prices would go up and generics would be harder to obtain. So these agreements cannot be written by special interests. We need to make sure we know what we're doing.
Mr. Heenan.
Yeah, as my friend Kathleen pointed out, this trade wars may be good in some parts of the state, but certainly not here in Montana to our farmers and ranchers. And what I'm hearing as I talk to people on the trail, cost of machinery is going to go up because of these tariffs, and it's going to be harder to export our crops. And, trade deficits might matter in places like Ohio and Michigan, but here in Montana, we rely on the ability to reliably export our crops. And this administration has put all that in jeopardy. And we have a representative now who has put party ahead of the people of Montana. And so, what we deserve on this and all matters is a representative that's going to put Montanans first. So I support the TPP, I support NAFTA because those are opportunities for Montana producers to make money and collaborate and be able to reliably ship their crops. And so I think a representative that's going to put Montana first is what we need.
Mr. Kier.
I think it's important to recognize, and we should all be concerned, that China doesn't play by the rules, and we do have to hold them accountable. But right now, I think we have an administration that thinks they're playing checkers while China's playing chess. And that's really troubling. I was here at an ag forum about a little over ago, and the entire place was filled with producers from the Golden Triangle, and there were quiet murmurs about how afraid they were of this administration's lack of understanding of agricultural policy. It's showing right now, and I think this is a huge opportunity for Democrats to talk about how much we do care about everyone in Montana. The truth is that Donald Trump is pounding his chest over foreign policy, and he's doing it at the cost of farm and ranch families in Montana. And right now, he is threatening to shut us off from markets, while Australia and South America and Canada will be more than pleased to move forward. We cannot do this alone. We cannot do this on our own. What we need to do is work with our allies, apply global pressure on China, and through that, make sure that they're playing on an even and level playing field and give our producers a chance to perform, as I know they can, on an equal and level playing field, because then Montana producers will thrive.
Mr. Meyer.
Sometimes being a leader means letting others go first. And Montana is, in the rural parts of the state, it's typically very Republican. And what I've read is that the folks in rural Montana are still huge Trump supporters. And so I would let Trump continue to do what he's going to do until some folks that are typically very Republican voting say, hey, we don't want to listen to Trump anymore. Democrats, what are your ideas? Because when you step in and say, I'm a Democrat, I know the answers, you're setting yourself up for a huge resentment. These people don't want to hear from us. And so let them come to us and say, what are your ideas? Instead of just saying, we know the answers, this is what we're going to do.
Mr. Pettinato.
A trade war would hurt Montana. That's what we've heard from everyone on the panel. Steel prices go up, soybean prices go down because we lose our market, we lose our beef market. Those are all really unacceptable things from us. And that's one half of this. When I hear about the Chinese trade deficit and I hear about the TPP, I hear a lot about jobs. Because we're talking about what it really comes down to when we talk about exports and imports. Part of it's farming, but part of it's jobs. Part of the worst parts of the TPP were that they didn't protect American workers. We could still do some of those international treaties. We could even join the TPP, as long as we could do things internally and domestically to help American workers. We can expand and strengthen unions, make it easier to join a union. It's ridiculous that McDonald's workers can't unionize because they have to go around and unionize every single individual McDonald's. With stronger unions, we can move our trade forward and still preserve the American middle class.
Thank you.
This next one will begin with Mr. Heenan. Here in Great Falls, Montana, the base camp for Lewis and Clark's historic exploration, and today the base camp for outdoor adventure, Western art, and Montana history. What issues under congressional control do you see as having particular impact on Great Falls, and where do you stand on that?
So, a lot of the folks in this room know that I've spent a lot of time here in my campaign, spent a lot of time in Great Falls, and being from Billings, there's a lot of commonality. It feels a lot like home when I campaign here in Great Falls, and I think this community, like Billings, is, we work hard for what we get. Nothing comes easy, and jobs are hard to come by. The economy doesn't grow on its own. It takes hard work. And so what I think I can do here is frankly a lot of what I can do in Billings and for hardworking people all across Montana, and that's restore the American dream. It's fight for funding for public education so our kids can get a head start. It's make sure we get paid a living wage so we're not working 2 and 3 jobs and still not getting ahead. It's fighting for a Medicare for all system so that nobody has to file bankruptcy. And it's representing people first, not corporate insiders, not corporate lobbyists. So, yeah, kitchen table issues.
Mr. Kier.
Look, Great Falls has a really special role in our nation's history, in our state's history. I think that in itself is an incredible opportunity to invest in the recreation and tourism industries that attract people here because of those things. There are federal programs and agencies that are great partners in doing that Congress can be supportive of, that I will be supportive of. I also think it's important that right now in our country, for the sake of Great Falls and other communities in Montana, we have a strong energy sector and a strong agricultural sector. And sustainable energy and agriculture are front and center here, are really important. I've done first-hand work on the Farm Bill in DC to make sure it works better for Montana producers and delivered results back here in Montana. That's an important thing to be able to do to help a community like Great Falls move forward. And last but not least, if Montana were its own nation, we would be the 6th largest nuclear power in the world. That is because of Malmstrom and Great Falls. And so don't take that for granted for an instant, how important it is that you have somebody who supports a strong State Department so that we are at peace in the world, and supports a smart, thoughtful, and capable military so we have the best people in the world working right here in Great Falls.
Mr. Meyer.
I'm going to be honest, this is only the 2nd time I've been to Great Falls. The first time, the drive is incredible. Coming up from Heenan, man, is incredible. Do not tell anybody. The first time I was in Great Falls was a public lands case in front of Judge Morris in federal court. And so protecting public lands in this area around your guys' homes here is incredibly important. The second issue I think is important. I spoke with Carol Bronson right before we talked. Carol, where are you? She said that affordable housing is a huge issue, and the feds have tried to take affordable housing line item cuts to neighbor works for the last few years.
We can't talk about any of that in public.
Oh, we can't talk about it. But supporting affordable housing for Great Falls communities is important.
Mr. Pettinato.
I remember one time my family, we were doing a Montana tour when I was young, I was a kid, and we came to Great Falls. We said, all right, we're going to go find the Great Falls. We didn't find the Great Falls. we instead, Montana and Great Falls has become the electric city. And this is really, to me, a crossroads of Montana. Because as you've heard me talk about the wind and the trees, I go to western Montana and I talk about the trees. I go to eastern Montana and I talk about the wind. Here in Great Falls, you guys have both. You guys have the wind and you have the trees and you have agriculture. And I see that as a lot of opportunity for Great Falls and a lot of opportunity to build it and move it forward. You know, when Grant said this is the 6th largest nuclear power, whenever people told me that fact, they always follow it up with, and we should secede. But I don't think that that's the right direction. I think instead we can work together, we can build Great Falls and Montana together using the natural resources that we have and as we've always done.
Ms. Williams.
So a few areas. One, economic development. As I understand from your economic development specialist, the wages here have kind of just plateaued, and so there's opportunities to maintain federal economic development funds, the department and the funds that CDMG, I think they're called, but the ability to borrow, to leverage, to loan, and to plan are critical. Agriculture, regional ag centers, a farm bill that works for Montana, trying to help diversify the agricultural sector after so many years of consolidation. Local food is one of my big bailiwicks. I just love it, and I think it's a glimmer of hope to bring people back to the land, to get youth out to the land. They're especially interested, they need to access to the land. Military, Department of Defense, veterans, absolutely key. We need to ensure that those are safe, and infrastructure.
Let's address dark money. During the 2012 election cycle, dark money groups pumped roughly $300 million into political messages that call for the election or defeat of federal candidates. Additionally, dark money groups spent hundreds of millions of dollars on political advertisements that supposedly focus more on issues than candidates. Dark money groups that reported expenditures to the FEC outspent liberal ones by about 8 to 1. The Center for Public Integrity in 2016, that's where that information came from. So my question is, to begin with Grant here, do you believe that the existence of large amounts of dark money in America's elections is a cause for concern? If no, why not? If yes, what would you, as representative in Congress, propose to do about that threat?
I think after threats to the free press right now, there's nothing more dangerous in our democracy than dark money and self-funded millionaires buying their elections. And I expect our incumbent to do both of those things and come after everything, come after me with everything he's got when I win this primary. When my wife and I wrestled with whether or not to run in this race, we're not millionaires. And what we wondered is, can real people still do this? Can everyday folks walk away from their career because they believe in the future of this country and the state, believe in service, and actually make a difference? And we decided that no matter what, we had to try. And I believe that the most powerful thing in a democracy is the person sitting next to you right now. It is everyone in this room. And it is the only way we can beat Greg Gianforte. And I will do everything to create total transparency and full disclosure on campaign financing when I'm in Congress. instant reporting of corporations when they fund any amount of electoral politics straight to their investors and to the community that's being targeted. And I'll work like hell to overturn the Citizens United, because we have got to give this country back to people.
Mr. Meyer.
I would agree with everything Grant said. And I would add that I have some cardboard handmade signs that say Meyer from Montana. This is real grassroots democracy. If we wanna win, we have to do it grassroots. And I really think that by not taking PAC money, by not having a bunch of money flow in, and if it does flow in, inevitably they're going to try and say, oh, this person's bad, he's horrible, blah, blah, blah. You got to make it fun. We have to make politics fun again. It's so slimy and just like, ugh, you don't want to hear about it, you don't want to watch it. But if you can make some ads where people laugh and like, huh, that's pretty funny. I wouldn't mind seeing another one of those ads. That would be pretty cool.
Mr. Pettinato.
We are losing our democracy. The Republicans can't win fair and square, so they're cheating. They're cheating with dark money, with Citizens United. They're cheating with gerrymandering. We do a little bit of that too, but they're the ones doing it. And they're cheating with voter ID and undermining the Voting Rights Act. And we need to fix all of those things. We need to overturn Citizens United through new Supreme Court justices, or litigation, or legislation, or an amendment if we need to. We need to fix gerrymandering and figure out a way that we can all work together and have equal representation for everyone. And we need to restore the Voting Rights Act and make sure that everybody gets a chance to vote, because we are stronger as a country when all of us gets our input and all of us contributes, and we have the perspectives of all citizens, and we don't try to exclude people. Maybe we need mail-in ballots for everybody, right? There's lots of things that we need to do, and there are some people up here who maybe think they can buy this election. I'm no millionaire either, but I think we can do this, and I think we can do it now.
Ms. Williams.
So I would love to have a magic wand. And when we talk about overturning Citizens United, the attorneys that I talk to say it's either the Supreme Court redeciding that decision, maybe litigation, but it's a constitutional amendment. So let's get that going, right? I'm committed to working on that. I think Tester drafted the language, so let's get that going. You've heard gerrymandering, transparency, public financing. Let's talk about public financing of campaigns. Voting rights, and I will say that I have worked on improvement in voting and elections. In the legislature, we passed one of the strongest disclosure acts. In fact, it was called the Disclose Act, that passed the legislature and is now law here in Montana. And I will say it's not just the money. We need to elect people that aren't corrupted by the money. Right. We need to, so in the legislature, whenever a lobbyist bought our dinner, I paid for it. I was the only one writing a check, excuse me. So that's what we need in Congress.
Mr. Heenan.
Yeah, so I've been called a single issue candidate because I care so much about this dark money in politics. To me, it is the biggest issue. I'm the only candidate in this race that has experience fighting dark money. I represented all of you and the people of Montana for free in that 2012 election cycle, going after the politicians that were taking dark money and going after the dark money groups themselves. And I'm proud to report that we've brought in now over $250,000 back to the state general fund as a result of that work. There's a movie called Dark Money. Senator Tester's in it, Governor Bullock's in it, John Heenan's in it. It is a big issue. And I'm already doing it as a candidate because I'm not taking corporate PAC money and I'm not taking corporate lobbyist money. I'm running to have no strings attached other than the people of Montana who I want to represent. I'll work with Senator Tester to overturn Citizens United. I've pledged term limits because I think representatives get cushy when they stay there too long. And I would would ban representatives from becoming corporate lobbyists after they serve.
Thank you. And now I'll redirect back to our moderator, Mary Sheehy-Mo.
Just a quick lightning round follow-up on that, one sentence response, and remember I'm an English teacher, I know all about conjunctions and semicolons. One sentence. Do you support a constitutional amendment declaring that corporations are not people and money is not speech? And we'll start with Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Mr. Pettinato.
Without admitting that we can't, that the Constitution already doesn't do it, yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Heenan.
Yes.
Mr. Kier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody want to repeat the response to that one? This one will be to Mr. Pettinato to start. Whether the specific issue is travel bans or a border wall, the current administration's approach to immigration seems to be inspired by and to inspire racial and religious prejudice. Both the Fourth and Ninth Circuit courts have struck down travel bans as discriminating against religion. Entire populations of Latino people have routinely been characterized as undesirable criminal thugs who must be kept out of America, if America is to be great again. What do you believe are the legitimate policy issues Americans must address in immigration, and how will you ensure that legislation does not result in de jure or de facto discrimination?
So many things. We don't need a wall. We just don't need a wall. We don't need a wall that's going to cost billions of dollars, that's going to destroy pristine environmental areas, that's going to separate us from our neighbors, and that isn't even going to work because you can just bring a ladder or a shovel. That's not the right way to do things. We need to fix, if we need to, we can pump up more money for the border. I don't know that that's even necessary. Because all of the facts show that immigration's going down. The facts show that immigrants don't even commit crimes at the same rate that American citizens do. If you want to come to America and you want to contribute and help us build for the future, and if you were already here and you were already doing that, then I want to support you, because that is what it means to be America. And my family's all a bunch of immigrants from all sorts of places, and I think a lot of us here are. So I think that there's a lot we can do to help DACA and to help all these things and have some common sense and facts.
Ms. Williams.
So we do need a secure border, both on the south and the north. We need it to be secure to protect us, but we also need it to be to facilitate trade and travel. I served on a U.S.-Canadian trade organization, and we talked a lot about border issues and really worked on solving problems. A wall is a ridiculous idea. Actually, there's congressional representatives in border districts that have talked about using technology and how technology is much cheaper, much more effective, and it's available. And I've worked with farmers and ranchers most of my career, and the last 5 years with some down along the border, and they're concerned about wildlife migration and the ability of jaguars to be recovered, for example. So, and I don't know how you build a wall down the middle of the Rio Grande River anyway, so, which is part of the border. So we need an immigration policy that has some compassion to it. My husband worked in Iraq, and if there are translators, oh, wow, there's a lot more to say. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, so what's going on and what we all see, and it's really tragic, is if we were paying attention, we would say, we being the 99.9% of us would say, how come the 0.01% keeps grabbing more for themselves on our backs? Tax handouts for them, cutting our Medicare and Social Security. And so what they do, they being the Koch brothers, they being the other side, is to find these issues that divide us as Americans. And this is one of the worst. I mean, we're seeing these ads now in a race in Montana of Mexicans pointing guns at people. And it's all fear-mongering, it's all hate-based, and politicians that engage in othering, in race baiting, are on the wrong side of history, in my opinion. Do we need to strengthen our borders? Of course. But do we need to be able to grow our economy thoughtfully by giving immigrants a path to citizenship the way we've always had. The reason that makes our country great is we're this amazing melting pot, and that needs to continue.
Mr. Kier.
I think there's never been a more important time for us to find leaders in this country who are more interested in mending fences than building walls, and who are interested in using unity and compassion to lead us through the biggest issues of our days, not hatred and division. And right now, I think we have way too much hatred and division coming out of Washington and coming into Montana. It's legitimate, and it is true. We absolutely have to have strong borders, but we do that through technology and skilled and trained personnel on our borders. And we also have to be paying attention to our virtual borders. We are a serious threat through electronic means of invading this country, more so than we are people coming over our borders right now. And this administration is cutting its cybersecurity forces within the White House right now, which is absolutely abominable. And we really need to understand that this is a country of immigrants, and we have to give everyone a clear, predictable, legal path to citizenship. When we do that, we fulfill our promise to this country and to the world, and that makes us stronger and stronger and stronger for future generations.
Mr. Meyer.
Tengo un poco miedo porque no he hablado en un rato. Es que nosotros somos un país de inmigrantes y necesitamos hacer un plan en que gente que vive en otros países se puede venir aquí en los Estados Unidos y se puede trabajar bien duro, porque hay gente que vive en otros países que sí se puede trabajar bien grande. Y ¿qué más necesitamos hacer un plan en que la gente que son dreamers se puede vivir aquí sin miedo. I'm a little bit concerned, I'm a little bit scared because I haven't spoken Spanish in quite a while. We're a country of immigrants, and it's important that, what did I say? It's something about, yeah, there are lots of immigrants that want to come here, that work really hard. We need to create a pathway in which they can become citizens. We need to create a path and a plan for the dreamers so that they can stay here without fear.
Wow, we are on the last question, and I want to compliment all of you. You have been so respectful, and it's gone just like that from my point of view. And I also want to thank you five again, because it is such a sacrifice to run for office, and we are so fortunate to have you making that sacrifice and being with us tonight. So as you conclude the debate tonight, please take a final moment to address any issues here that I cut you off on, or that you feel like someone else made a comment that you would like to respond to, or failing that, why you think you are the best candidate to take on Congressman Gianforte in our general election. And we start this one with Ms. Williams.
Just one reflection. I think sometimes my healthcare proposal is called incrementalism, but it's actually going to get us there faster. So we need to win this seat back badly, and I'm tired of losing it. We need a candidate that has a strong progressive advocacy and voting record, who also has been honored by the Chamber of Commerce for their work with business, who has strong connections in the agricultural community across this state, and who has a record of passing legislation and building relationships in a hyper-partisan, divisive legislative environment. I am that candidate. I am a very unusual Democrat with that kind of breadth and depth. We need to send that kind of candidate to Congress. Look at who wins here. Senator Tester, former state legislator, grounded, farmer, Steve Bullock, former attorney general. It's experience and being grounded that is going to win this seat, and it'd be my honor to be your next Congresswoman.
Mr. Heenan.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with where I was gonna end, because I don't wanna run out of time, because you guys are keeping it strict. Next week, April 23rd, next Wednesday at the Russell Museum will be our last Great Falls event. I won't be on a timer. Feel free to please come out, hear what I have to say, and ask questions. So I wanted to announce that first. Look, you know, to me it's electability. These are all wonderful people on the stage. How do we beat a tech guy from Bozeman, a business guy in Billings, a guy with a track record of sticking up for people, working people around the state. And I've built a team to win in November. I've got great people on the ground across Montana. I'm the only one with a field team in Great Falls and along the High Line. Jacob Bachmeyer, if you haven't met Jacob, please do. He's doing hard work for me here in Great Falls, and he needs your help. So it's great that you're out. That's step one, but to win this thing, we all need to be out there knocking doors, doing all the hard things so we can take this seat back. I need your help. Thanks.
Mr. Kier.
I think one of the reasons that Trump won in Montana was because people are a little tired of career politicians, and I think people are looking for new faces. And I think just being really honest, as Democrats, I do believe we're not a minority party in the state, and we win when we're honest about that, and we're pragmatic, and we go into communities and we talk about real issues that people care about, things that bring us together as Montanans more than Republicans or Democrats. I've been doing that with my career for 13 years, successfully working on very progressive values with traditional farm and ranch families, rural communities, identifying those places where we can build relationships around our shared values and be successful as Montanans first and foremost. I've built an outstanding team. We've been incredible at raising money and supporting the state because I think people are behind our message and our vision. And it is going to take those kinds of skills and those kinds of abilities to go in those communities to win this election, but also to serve. And when we serve well in this seat, when we do this work right, that's how this party grows. That's how we change people's minds in Montana about who Democrats are and why we're the party that will serve all Montanans.
Mr. Meyer.
Gianforte's employees and their tech guys, we came to Montana for our public lands. I'm a public lands attorney. I'm still practicing public land law. I've got a lawsuit, I've got a legal brief due tonight at midnight. So I'm gonna go to the Perkins, or if someone can tell me a place that's open till midnight, I'm gonna work after that. I've got some handmade cardboard signs. I'm asking local businesses to put those in their window, and people are doing it in their businesses and their homes. It's a good way to get my name out there, and I appreciate your vote on June 5th.
Mr. Pettinato.
We Montana Democrats have an opportunity before us to take back this seat from Representative Greg Gianforte. But it comes with a risk, because not since 2008 have we selected someone in a seriously contested statewide primary who has gone on to defeat the Republican. I'm the only one up here who can defeat Greg Gianforte. I'm the only candidate in the race, born and raised in Montana. And when you think about the Democrats who have won across the state, I know you put Brian Schweitzer and Max Baucus on that list. I worked for both of them. Brian taught me how to campaign, and Max taught me how to legislate. So I love this state, and I'm here to protect Montanans. You know, I've defeated wealthy interests before. As I mentioned, just last year I defeated Donald Trump's lawyer's firm, saved taxpayers $1.5 billion. My experiences have shown me these opportunities for growing Montana and for moving forward. With the wind in the trees, we can bring more jobs and more money to Montana than Gianforte ever dreamed. We can expand freedom and build Montana for the future. And look, there's a new sheriff in town, but I can't do this alone. If you want to beat Gianforte, vote for me, and together we will send the body slammer packing.
And that concludes our forum. Here to do a little housekeeping is Jerry Jennings, and let me answer the question that's on everyone's mind. No, we did not discuss color coordination. You gotta love it. It's not Halloween either.
You know, this has been really impressive. These 5 candidates have fun, they smiled, they joked, they gave us great, serious, strongly held answers, and we really appreciate it. I talked to the Tribune reporter who I worked with for publicity on this, and he said, you know, They are committed, they're intelligent, and they are respectful. And I saw all of that tonight. I'm sure all of you did. And you know, we don't see much of that. So let's give them another round. We have a duty as American citizens, and that is to vote. So be sure that you vote, be sure that you get your friends to vote. We need to have a strong Democrat running against Greg Gianforte, and it's really important. I do want to, again, thank the church for letting us use this space, but I want to let you know that Great Falls Rising usually meets the last Tuesday of the month. If you're interested in being on our email list, please let me know. This month is different because this is when the candidates could meet, and plus we needed to do it before the mail-in ballots went out. So once again, thank you very much for coming. Spread the word. These are great folks.